The salt wind cuts across my face as I sit on the sand, shoes discarded beside me, watching the late afternoon sun turn the private beach into gold and amber. My day off. Finally. 3 double shifts in a row at the pediatric unit left me hollow and aching, and Margaret insisted I take her guest pass to this resort because she saw the exhaustion eating me alive. The water stretches endlessly before me, deceptively calm, and I let my eyes drift closed for just a moment. The scream shatters the peace. My eyes snap open, and I am on my feet before conscious thought takes over, my gaze scanning the water. There. Beyond the buoys marking the safe swimming area, a small shape thrashing in the waves. A child. My heart slams against my ribs as I sprint toward the water, my nurse training overriding everything else. I dive into the surf, and the cold shocks my system, but I push through, swimming hard toward the little girl whose head keeps disappearing beneath the surface. She cannot be more than 6 years old. Dark hair plastered to her skull, arms flailing weakly. I reach her just as she goes under again, and I grab her, pulling her against me, turning back toward shore. She is limp, too limp. I swim one-armed, my other arm locked around her small body, my legs kicking desperately against the current that tried to drag her out. My lungs burn. The shore feels impossibly far. Then my feet find sand and I am staggering out of the water, laying her carefully on the beach, my fingers finding her neck for a pulse. Faint. Too faint. She is not breathing. I tilt her head back, check her airway, begin rescue breaths. 2 breaths. Check for response. Nothing. I start compressions, my hands positioned carefully on her tiny sternum, counting in my head, muscle memory taking over. A crowd gathers, but I do not look up. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. Again. Again. Come on, sweetheart. Breathe. The child convulses and water spills from her mouth. I turn her on her side and she coughs, choking, sucking in air. Her eyes flutter open. Relief crashes through me so powerfully my hands shake. She is alive. The crowd murmurs and someone is calling for an ambulance, but I am focused on the little girl, checking her pulse again, watching the color return to her lips. She looks up at me with enormous dark eyes, terrified and confused, and I smooth her wet hair back from her face. You are safe now. You are going to be okay. That is when I notice the necklace. Gold, intricate, expensive beyond anything a child should wear to a beach. A locket with engravings so detailed it looks antique. Who is this child? The crowd parts suddenly, not for paramedics, for men in dark suits, moving with coordinated precision that makes my stomach tighten. Security. Private security. 4 of them surrounding us in seconds, and the atmosphere shifts from relief to something else, something threatening. A black SUV pulls up onto the sand itself, tires digging into the beach where vehicles should not be. My arms instinctively tighten around the little girl. One of the men speaks into his wrist, his eyes never leaving me. She is secure. The nurse has her. My heart pounds differently now. Not exertion, fear. The child in my arms is no ordinary little girl. The rear door of the SUV opens and another man emerges. Tall. Expensive suit despite the beach setting. His gaze sweeps the scene and lands on me with an intensity that makes my breath catch. He approaches and the other men step aside for him. You need to come with us. His voice is calm, but it is not a request. I shake my head, my arms still around the girl who is now clinging to me. She needs a hospital, examination, observation for secondary drowning. I am a nurse. I know what she needs. The man studies me for a long moment. His face is hard, unreadable. Then you will provide that care. Get in the vehicle. I open my mouth to refuse, but he is already turning away, pulling out a phone, speaking quietly to someone. The other men move closer, not touching me, not threatening overtly, but the message is clear. One of them reaches for the child, and she buries her face against my shoulder, whimpering. I make a decision that will change everything. I stand, the girl in my arms, and I walk toward the SUV because I will not let them take her without me. As I climb inside, I see the man with the phone finish his conversation. He looks at me through the open door. Someone wants to speak with you. He holds out the phone. It is not a request. Nothing about this is a request. I take the phone with shaking fingers, and the little girl trembles against me, and I do not yet know that I have just stepped into a world from which there is no safe return. Now please take a moment and subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from, and what time is it. It is always fascinating to see where these stories get all around the world. Thank you. I hold the phone to my ear, but I do not speak first, waiting, my heart hammering against my ribs while the little girl shivers in my arms, her wet skin cold against mine. The voice that comes through is deep, controlled, and edged with something I cannot name. You saved my daughter. I will not forget this. Bring her home. The line goes dead before I can respond, and I hand the phone back to the suited man who takes it without expression. The SUV begins moving, tires leaving the sand, and I look down at the child who has her face pressed against my shoulder, her small fingers twisted in my damp shirt. What is your name, sweetheart? My voice comes out steadier than I feel. She does not answer, just burrows closer, and I wrap my arms more securely around her, my nurse instincts overriding the fear that coils in my stomach. We drive for 20 minutes along coastal roads that grow progressively more isolated, more expensive, the houses becoming estates, the estates becoming compounds, and then we turn through iron gates that open silently, rolling up a drive lined with trees that filter the late sun into gold patterns. The house at the end is not a house, it is a mansion. Stone and glass and architectural lines that speak of wealth beyond my comprehension. The SUV stops at the entrance, and the men move with coordinated efficiency, one opening my door, another scanning the surroundings, and I climb out with the child still clinging to me, like I am the only solid thing in her world. A woman in a crisp uniform appears, her face professional but concerned, and she reaches for the girl, but the child makes a small sound of distress and tightens her grip on me. I am a nurse. She needs to be examined, vital signs monitored. She could still have water in her lungs or develop secondary drowning. My voice is firm, falling into the authority of my training, and the woman hesitates, looking past me to one of the men who gives a slight nod. This way. The interior is as overwhelming as the exterior. Marble floors, art that looks original and priceless, a staircase that curves upward like something from a film. We climb to the second floor, and I am led into a bedroom that is clearly the child's, all soft colors and expensive toys arranged with care, and there is a connecting bathroom where I set the little girl down gently on the counter. Let me look at you. Can you tell me your name? She looks at me with those enormous dark eyes and whispers so softly I almost miss it. Sophia. Sophia. I smile at her, keeping my movements slow and non-threatening as I check her pupils, her pulse, listening to her lungs with my ear against her small back since I have no stethoscope. Her breathing is clear, her color is good. The shivering is from cold and shock, not medical distress. You are very brave, Sophia. You are going to be fine. I hear the door open behind me, and every nerve in my body goes taut. I turn, and the man standing in the doorway makes the enormous room feel small. He is tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair silvered at the temples, wearing a suit that probably costs more than my car. But it is his eyes that stop my breath. Gray, cold, assessing me with an intensity that feels invasive, like he is cataloging every detail, every potential threat, every weakness. You saved her. His voice is the same one from the phone. Controlled and dangerously calm. I did my job. Anyone would have done the same. Not anyone. He steps into the room and I resist the urge to step back, to put distance between us, because I will not show fear even though my heart is racing. He moves to Sophia and she watches him, but does not reach for him the way she reached for me, and something flickers across his face so quickly I almost miss it. Pain. Raw and quickly buried. Is she injured? No. But she needs to be watched for the next 24 hours. Secondary drowning is a risk. I can give you the signs to monitor. You will stay and monitor her yourself. It is not a question. I have a life, a job. I cannot just stay here because you decide I should. Who are you? He looks at me for a long moment, and I see the calculation behind those gray eyes. Alexander Thornhill. This is my daughter. I want to know who saved her life. Eleanor Whitmore. I am a pediatric nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital. Where are Sophia's parents? Why was she alone at the beach? I am her parent. Her mother is dead. The words are flat, final, and I see Sophia flinch. My training kicks in, and I move back to the little girl, putting myself between her and the tension in the room. She needs rest and warmth and calm. Not this. Alexander's jaw tightens, but he nods. Thomas will get you whatever medical supplies you require. You will stay until I am satisfied she is out of danger. I open my mouth to argue, but he is already turning away, pulling out his phone, and the dismissal is clear. The suited man from the beach appears in the doorway. Thomas, I will take care of Miss Whitmore's requirements. Alexander leaves without another word, and I am left standing in a child's bedroom in a mansion that feels more like a fortress, with a little girl who will not let go of my hand, and the dawning realization that I have stepped into something far more complicated and dangerous than a simple rescue. Thomas shows me to a guest room on the third floor, and the space is larger than my entire apartment, decorated in soft grays and whites that speak of professional design and unlimited budget. A four-poster bed dominates the room, the linens looking like they have never been touched, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I can see the ocean spreading out endlessly, the same water that nearly claimed Sophia's life just hours ago. Thomas tells me that someone will retrieve my belongings from my apartment and bring them here. And the words send ice through my veins because I never gave them my address. Of course, they already know where I live. They know everything about me by now. Background check, employment history, financial records, all of it laid bare before Alexander Thornhill's cold, gray eyes while I was tending to his daughter. Thomas leaves, and I stand in the center of this beautiful prison, my damp clothes clinging uncomfortably to my skin, my mind racing. I should call Margaret. I should call the police. I should do something other than stand here accepting this situation, but what would I tell them? A powerful man asked me to stay and monitor his daughter, and I agreed? That I am not actually being held against my will. Not really, because the door is not locked when I check it. Turning the handle slowly and pulling it open to find a man in a dark suit standing in the hallway, his posture relaxed but alert, his eyes meeting mine with professional courtesy that does nothing to disguise the fact that he is a guard and I am being watched. I close the door. My hands shake as I strip off my salt-stiffened clothes and step into the bathroom, another space of marble and glass and fixtures that probably cost more than I make in 6 months. And I stand under water hot enough to burn, trying to wash away the feeling of the ocean, the weight of Sophia's limp body, the intensity of Alexander's gaze. I am a pediatric nurse from a modest background, the daughter of parents who died too young and left me with nothing but student debt and a determination to save lives because I could not save theirs. I live in a one-bedroom apartment with furniture from thrift stores, and I eat pasta 4 nights a week because that is what my budget allows. This world of wealth and power and casual violence is so far beyond my experience that I feel unmoored, drifting in currents I do not understand. I dress in my damp clothes because I have nothing else, and I pace the room, watching the sun sink lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that would be beautiful if I were not so afraid. A knock interrupts my spiraling thoughts, and I open the door to find Thomas holding a large medical bag, the kind I use at the hospital. He sets it on the table near the window, and I check the contents, finding everything I requested and more. Supplies that would take me hours to gather, even at St. Catherine's, all delivered in under 2 hours. I look up at Thomas, and he is watching me with an expression I cannot read. You asked about Mrs. Thornhill. His voice is quiet, almost gentle. I wait, my heart beating faster. Some questions are not safe to ask in this house, Miss Whitmore. But I will tell you this much. She died 8 months ago. Sophia has not been the same since. Withdrawn, silent. The specialists say trauma. I hear the warning beneath his words, the careful way he parcels out information, and I understand that I am being told both to stop asking and that there is something to ask about. Was it really an accident? The question escapes before I can stop it, and Thomas's expression closes like a door slamming shut. Mr. Thornhill is not a man to cross, but he is a man of honor. In this world, that means something. He leaves before I can ask what world he means, though I already know. I have seen enough crime dramas, read enough news articles. The private security, the wealth, the control, the need for discretion. Alexander Thornhill is not a legitimate businessman, no matter what his taxes might say. I should run. Every instinct of self-preservation is screaming at me to get out of this house, away from these dangerous people, back to my small, safe life. But I think of Sophia's face when she clung to me, the way she whispered my name, like I was the only safe thing in her world. I think of Alexander's eyes, when she called for me instead of him. That flash of pain so raw, it made my chest ache. I cannot sleep. I lie in the enormous bed and stare at the ceiling and listen to the sound of the ocean through the open window. And I think about a little girl who lost her mother, and a father who cannot reach his own daughter, and a nurse who should know better than to stay. The door opens. No knock, just the quiet click of the latch, and then Alexander Thornhill is standing in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, his jacket gone, and his shirt sleeves rolled up, and his expression unreadable in the shadows. I sit up, my heart slamming against my ribs. I could not sleep. His voice is different in the darkness, quieter, less controlled. I wanted to ensure you have everything you need. I should tell him to leave. Instead, I hear myself asking if he ever sleeps, or if he spends his nights checking on his staff and making sure his fortress is secure. It is not meant to sound bitter, but it does. And he steps into the room, closing the door behind him. You are not staff, Miss Whitmore. Then what am I? A guest? A prisoner? A convenient solution to your daughter's trauma? He moves closer, and I can smell his cologne now, something expensive and subtle that probably has a French name I cannot pronounce. You are free to leave whenever you wish. But I cannot help but notice that you have not asked for a car to take you home. I stand because I will not have this conversation from a position of weakness, and suddenly we are very close in the dim room, close enough that I can see the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. Sophia asked for you tonight. By name. She has not asked for anyone since Caroline died. Would you abandon a child who needs you? The words hit like a physical blow because he knows exactly what to say, exactly how to trap me with my own compassion. That is not fair. Nothing about this is fair. But you will stay. It is not a question, and I hate that he is right. I will stay for Sophia. Only for Sophia. He studies me for a long moment, and something shifts in his expression, something almost like respect. Of course, only for Sophia. He turns to leave, and I should let him go, but instead, I ask why his daughter does not trust him, why she reached for a stranger instead of her father, and he stops with his hand on the door. When you have an answer to that question, Miss Whitmore, perhaps you will understand why I need you here. Then he is gone, and I am alone in the darkness with more questions than answers, and the certainty that I have made a choice that will change everything. I wake to find clothes laid out on the chair beside the bed. Soft gray trousers, and a cashmere sweater in cream, both in my exact size, and the efficiency of it sends a shiver through me, because it means Alexander's people have measured me somehow, catalogued my dimensions while I slept, or perhaps from security footage, and I do not know whether to be impressed or terrified. I dress quickly, the clothes fitting perfectly, the fabric more luxurious than anything I have ever owned, and I make my way down the hallway toward Sophia's room, passing guards who nod respectfully, but whose eyes track my every movement. I knock softly and enter to find Sophia awake, sitting cross-legged on her enormous bed, holding a silver-framed photograph in both hands, staring at it with an intensity that breaks my heart. I move closer, sitting on the edge of the bed, and she tilts the frame so I can see. The woman in the photograph is beautiful in that effortless way some people are. Dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders, eyes the same warm brown as Sophia's, her smile bright and genuine as she holds a much younger Sophia on her hip. That is my mama. Sophia's voice is small, fragile as spun glass. She went away. She is very beautiful. You look just like her. Sophia studies the photograph for another moment, then looks up at me with those enormous eyes. Will you go away too? The question lands like a fist to my chest, and I reach out, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. I will stay today. I cannot promise more than that, but I promise you today. Something in her face transforms, a smile breaking through like sunlight after storm, and she throws her arms around my neck, the photograph falling forgotten onto the bed. We go down to breakfast together, Sophia's hand tight in mine, and the terrace where the table is set overlooks the ocean, white tablecloth snapping gently in the morning breeze, crystal and silver catching the light. Alexander is already there, standing at the railing with a coffee cup in hand, and he turns when he hears us approach. He is wearing dark trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. No tie, his hair slightly damp as though he has recently showered. And even in this casual state, he radiates controlled power. Good morning. His eyes move from Sophia to me, and something flickers in their gray depths. Something warm that was not there yesterday. Sophia surprises me by responding with a quiet good morning instead of silence, and we sit at the table where staff appear immediately with food, fresh fruit and pastries and perfectly cooked eggs. Sophia begins talking, hesitant at first, but gaining confidence, telling me about her dolls, about the playroom on the fourth floor, about her favorite breakfast being waffles with strawberries. I listen and respond and encourage, but I am intensely aware of Alexander watching us, his expression unreadable, except for that hunger in his eyes, that naked longing as he watches his daughter be herself for the first time in 8 months. After Sophia finishes eating, a woman in a neat dress appears, and Sophia goes without protest for her lessons, waving at me as she leaves, and then it is just Alexander and me on the terrace, with the sound of the ocean and the weight of everything unspoken between us. Walk with me. It is not quite a command, but not quite a request, and I stand, following him down stone steps into gardens that are immaculately maintained, roses and lavender and flowering trees I cannot name. We walk in silence for several minutes before he speaks. She has not been like that since Caroline died. I have hired specialists, therapists, tried everything. Nothing worked. But with you, she is herself again. I do not know what you want me to say. I keep my voice level, professional, even as my heart races. What do you want from me, Mr. Thornhill? Alexander. He stops walking, turning to face me fully. If you are going to help my daughter, we should dispense with formalities. What happened to your wife? His jaw tightens, a muscle jumping, and for a moment I think he will not answer. An accident. The word is clipped, final. I hold his gaze. You are lying, or at least not telling me everything. Why should I stay and help Sophia if you will not be honest with me? Something dangerous flashes in his eyes, and I realize I have pushed too hard, but then he exhales slowly, and the danger recedes. Stay for 2 weeks. Help Sophia adjust. Help her learn to trust again. Name your price. I do not want your money. Then what do you want? Honesty. If I am walking into danger, if Sophia is in danger, I deserve to know the truth. Alexander looks at me for a long moment, and I see the calculation happening behind those gray eyes, weighing risk against necessity. My world is not safe, Eleanor. There are people who would hurt Sophia to hurt me. That is why the security, why the discretion. Caroline's death was ruled an accident, but it was not. He is admitting his wife was murdered. He is admitting his daughter is a target. I should run. Do you know who killed her? Not yet. But I will. The words are a promise and a threat, and I believe him absolutely. Why would I stay here, put myself in danger for a child I just met and a man I do not know? Because Sophia needs you. His mask slips, and I see desperation, raw and unhidden. I have built an empire. I control territory across 3 states. I have power and money and resources most people cannot imagine, and I am helpless to reach my own daughter. I cannot give her what she needs. But you can. The admission costs him. I can see it in the tension of his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. This man is not accustomed to asking for help, to admitting weakness, and he is doing both because he loves his daughter more than his pride. 1 week. I tell him with as much firmness as I can summon, trying to reclaim some fragment of control in a situation where I have none. Not 2 weeks. 1. Alexander studies me for a long moment, and I see something shift in his expression, something that might be respect, and he nods once. Agreed. But I have conditions. I can see this surprises him. This man who is accustomed to giving orders and having them followed without question, and his eyebrow lifts slightly. I will not be monitored in my room. I need privacy. I need to be able to contact my friend Margaret, to let her know I am safe. And I need to understand the security protocols, the real ones, so that I can keep Sophia safe if something happens. Alexander considers this, and then extends his hand. Done. We shake, and his hand is warm and strong, and the touch sends electricity up my arm, and I pull away quickly, unsettled by my body's response to him. Thomas Redmond gives me the security briefing in a ground-floor office that looks like it belongs in a corporate building rather than a private home, complete with monitors showing camera feeds from every angle of the estate. He walks me through the layers of protection with professional efficiency. Perimeter sensors, cameras with facial recognition, guards on rotation, panic rooms on every floor, direct lines to local law enforcement who are apparently very cooperative. I do not ask why the police are so helpful to a man like Alexander. Thomas explains the import and export business, the shipping lanes, the territorial agreements with other organizations, and he never uses words like criminal or mafia or illegal, but I understand perfectly what he is telling me. This is organized crime on a scale I never imagined, sophisticated and structured and operating in shadows just beyond the reach of law. I should run. Every survival instinct I possess is screaming at me to get out of this house, away from these dangerous people, back to my small apartment and my predictable shifts at St. Catherine's, where the most dangerous thing I face is an angry parent or a difficult diagnosis. But then Thomas escorts me back upstairs, and I return to the playroom on the 4th floor, where Sophia is arranging her dolls in a circle for a tea party. And when she sees me, her entire face transforms with joy, and she runs to me with her arms outstretched, and I catch her and lift her and feel her small body press against mine with absolute trust, and I know I am not going anywhere. The days develop a rhythm that feels almost normal if I do not think too hard about the armed guards or the security cameras, or the fact that I am living in the home of a man who operates outside the law. I spend my mornings and afternoons with Sophia, playing games and reading stories and doing the art projects that occupy children her age, But I am also gently, carefully encouraging her to talk about her feelings, about her mother, about the night everything changed. She tells me she misses her mama every day. She tells me she has bad dreams where mama is calling for her, but she cannot find her. She tells me that the night mama went away, she heard shouting, loud voices that scared her, and she hid in her closet until everything was quiet. My blood runs cold when she says this because it confirms what I already suspected. Caroline Thornhill did not die in some simple accident. Something violent happened, something traumatic enough that this child has spent 8 months locked inside her own grief and fear. In the evenings, after Sophia is asleep, I find myself drawn to the library on the second floor, a room of floor-to-ceiling books and leather furniture and windows that look out over the dark ocean. I tell myself I am there to read, to decompress, to have some time alone, but the truth is I am hoping Alexander will appear, and he always does, as though he has been waiting for me, as though these evening hours belong to us alone. We talk, carefully at first, dancing around dangerous topics, but with each passing night we grow bolder. He tells me about inheriting his father's organization at 25, about the choice between taking control or watching it fall to men with no code, no honor, who would turn it into something purely destructive. He tells me about the impossible balance of operating in a world where violence is currency, but trying to maintain some thread of morality, some line he will not cross. I tell him about losing my parents in a car accident when I was 19, about putting myself through nursing school with loans and scholarships and sheer stubborn determination, about choosing pediatrics because I wanted to save children the way no one could save me from being orphaned. He listens with an intensity that makes me feel seen in a way I have not felt in years. And I realize this man who commands criminal enterprises and controls territory across multiple states is giving me his complete attention as though nothing else in the world matters. The sixth night arrives with a tension I can feel in the air itself, as though the atmosphere has thickened somehow, become charged with electricity that makes my skin prickle with awareness. Sophia goes to bed easily, tired from a day spent in the garden chasing butterflies and making elaborate stories with her dolls, and I read her 2 chapters from the book about the girl who discovers a magical wardrobe before her eyes drift closed and her breathing evens into sleep. I stand in the doorway for a long moment, watching her small form curled under blankets patterned with stars, thinking about how much she has opened up in just 6 days, how the withdrawn, silent child I met on the beach has begun to emerge from her shell of grief. I close the door softly and make my way downstairs toward the library, that space that has become ours in the evenings, and I find Alexander already there, standing at the window with his phone pressed to his ear, his posture rigid in a way that immediately sets alarm bells ringing in my mind. I pause in the doorway, uncertain whether to enter or retreat, and he turns slightly, sees me, and the expression on his face makes my blood run cold. He holds up one finger, asking me to wait, and continues his conversation in a voice so low I cannot make out words, only the tone, which is hard and dangerous and controlled in that way, that means violence is simmering just beneath the surface. He ends the call abruptly and stands for a moment with his back to me, shoulders tight, and I see his hand clench into a fist at his side. What is wrong? My voice sounds too loud in the sudden silence. He turns to face me fully, and his expression has transformed into something I have not seen before. Not the careful politeness of our first meeting, or the warmth that has been growing between us these past nights, but something cold and lethal that reminds me exactly what he is. There is a situation developing. His voice is clipped, professional, stripped of all the intimacy that has been building between us. You need to take Sophia to her room and lock the door. Do not open it for anyone except Thomas or me. Eleanor, do you understand? I nod, but my mind is racing, trying to process what is happening. What kind of threat requires locking doors in a house that already has armed guards and security cameras and layers of protection I still do not fully understand? I start to ask another question, but he is already moving past me toward the door, pulling his phone out again, and Thomas appears in the hallway as though summoned by some signal I did not see. Take her upstairs now. Stay with Sophia. No one gets past you. Thomas nods once, his hand moving to the weapon I now realize he carries beneath his jacket, always, every moment, and the casual familiarity of the gesture makes this more real, more terrifying. Come with me, Miss Whitmore. Thomas's voice is gentle but firm, and he places a hand on my elbow, guiding me toward the stairs. I look back over my shoulder and see Alexander already on his phone again, issuing orders in that cold, commanding voice, and our eyes meet for just a second, and I see something flash across his face, fear perhaps, or regret, before his expression shutters closed and he turns away. Thomas and I climb the stairs quickly and he checks Sophia's room, finding her still asleep, undisturbed, and then he positions himself in the hallway outside her door, while I go inside and lock it from within as instructed. I sit on the edge of Sophia's bed in the darkness, listening to her peaceful breathing and the sudden sounds from outside, vehicles approaching, the low rumble of male voices, footsteps moving quickly through the house below, and I realize with a clarity that feels like ice water in my veins that this is what Alexander's world truly means, not just abstract danger but concrete immediate violence, and I have brought myself into the center of it by choosing to stay. The seventh day arrives with the morning sun streaming through my window, and the knowledge that I should pack my few belongings and leave this place, return to my apartment and my normal life, and pretend that the past week was nothing more than a strange detour. But when I go to Sophia's room and find her already awake, already smiling at me with that radiant trust that breaks my heart, I hear myself asking Alexander at breakfast if I might stay another week, just to make sure Sophia's progress continues, just to ensure she is truly stable. For Sophia, I tell myself, the lie sitting heavy in my chest, and Alexander's eyes meet mine across the table, and he says yes without hesitation, and we both know we are lying to ourselves about why I am staying. The tension between us becomes something physical, a living thing that takes up space in every room we occupy together, and every accidental brush of hands feels like fire, every shared glance loaded with meaning that neither of us can acknowledge in daylight. Sophia continues to open up in ways that feel like small miracles, talking about Caroline with tears streaming down her face, but talking nonetheless, letting me hold her while she grieves, and I gently encourage her to include Alexander in these moments, suggesting he read to her before bed, that they have breakfast together on the terrace, small steps toward rebuilding what grief has broken between father and daughter. Sophia is hesitant at first, her eyes darting to him with something like fear, or maybe just the terror of losing another person she loves, but she is willing to try, and I watch Alexander with this little girl, and I see the tenderness he works so hard to hide, the fear in his eyes that he will do something wrong, that he will drive her further away. I coach him gently when we are alone, telling him to be patient, to let her come to him in her own time, to not force closeness, but to make himself available for it. And Alexander, this man who commands entire organizations and controls territory and makes people obey with a single look, surrenders completely to my guidance when it comes to his daughter. One afternoon I am walking past the music room on the third floor, and I hear piano music, something classical and achingly beautiful, and I pause in the doorway to find Alexander at a grand piano, his fingers moving across the keys with a skill I did not know he possessed. He stops when he sees me, and I ask him to continue, and after a moment's hesitation, he does, and I stand there listening to this complex, dangerous man create something so purely lovely. And when the piece ends, I ask about it, and he tells me Caroline loved music, that this was her room, that she played every day, and I understand that I am being allowed into sacred space, into the heart of his grief. I ask how they met, and Alexander tells me the story in a voice gone soft with memory. How Caroline was a teacher at a private school, innocent and bright, and so far removed from his world that he tried to stay away. But she pursued him with a determination that matched his own, insisting she was strong enough for his life, and his voice breaks when he says she was not, that his world destroyed her just as he knew it would, that her death is his fault and his alone. I hear the guilt that eats at him, the self-hatred that colors everything, and I tell him that Caroline made her choice, that he cannot control everything, that loving someone always carries risk. Alexander looks at me with such raw emotion that my breath stops in my chest, and he tells me he cannot lose anyone else. He cannot lose Sophia, and he cannot bear the thought of me in danger because of him. I realize what he is confessing, that his feelings for me are real, deep, dangerous in their own way, and I admit that I feel it too, this terrifying, impossible pull toward him. We agree to maintain distance, to keep things professional for Sophia's sake and for my safety, and the agreement lasts less than a day. That night I cannot sleep despite the exhaustion that sits heavy in my bones. And I find myself walking the grounds long after the house has gone quiet, my feet carrying me past the darkened gardens and down the stone path toward the pool that gleams like polished glass under the lights positioned in the landscaping around it. I should return to my room, lock the door, maintain the distance Alexander and I agreed to just hours ago in the music room. But my body moves forward, as though pulled by invisible strings, and when I round the corner and see the pool area, I stop breathing because Alexander is already there, cutting through the water with powerful strokes that send ripples glittering across the surface. I should leave. Every rational thought in my head screams at me to turn around and walk away before he sees me, before this thing between us ignites past the point where we can contain it. I stay. He surfaces at the far end, water streaming down his face and shoulders, and he sees me standing there in the shadows and goes completely still. And we stare at each other across the distance, and I feel the air itself change, become charged with electricity that makes my skin prickle with awareness and need. Alexander pulls himself out of the pool in one fluid movement, water cascading down his body, and even in the dim lighting I can see every line of muscle, the breadth of his shoulders, the way his wet hair falls across his forehead, and my mouth goes dry and heat floods through me despite the cool night air. He walks toward me slowly, deliberately, giving me time to run, to retreat, to preserve the boundaries we agreed to maintain, and I do not move, cannot move, can only stand there watching him approach like some predator closing in on prey, except I do not feel like prey, I feel like a woman on fire. He stops just inches away, close enough that I can see water droplets clinging to his skin, close enough that I can smell chlorine and something else, something essentially him, and his voice is rough when he speaks. Tell me to stop, Eleanor. I open my mouth but no words come out because I do not want him to stop. I want the opposite of stopping. I want everything I have been denying myself since that first moment in his study when our eyes met and something fundamental shifted in my universe. He reaches out slowly, his wet hands cupping my face with a gentleness that breaks something inside me. And he asks again, his gray eyes searching mine with an intensity that steals my breath. Tell me to stop. I kiss him instead, rising on my toes and pressing my mouth to his, and this kiss is nothing like the desperate collision in his study. This is slower, deeper, more deliberate, a choice we are both making with full knowledge of the consequences. Alexander makes a sound low in his throat and pulls me closer, his wet body soaking through my thin nightclothes, and he kisses me like a man drowning, like I am air and water and salvation all at once. And I respond with equal fervor, my hands moving to his bare shoulders, his neck, tangling in his wet hair. He pulls back, his forehead resting against mine, both of us breathing hard, and tells me this is wrong, that I deserve better than a man with blood on his hands, and I tell him I see him, not just the dangerous parts, but the man who loves his daughter desperately, who plays music in the dark, who carries the weight of his choices with honor, and I am choosing this with open eyes. Morning arrives too soon, pale light filtering through the curtains and touching my face where it rests against Alexander's chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, and for one perfect moment, I let myself exist in this space before reality crashes back with all its complications. We cannot hide this from the household, from Thomas who sees everything, from the staff who move through these halls like ghosts, and most importantly, Sophia cannot know. Not yet. Not until we understand what this is beyond desperate attraction and impossible circumstances. Alexander stirs, his arms tightening around me briefly before he pulls back to look at my face, and I see the same thoughts moving behind his gray eyes, the calculation and concern that never fully leaves him even in our most intimate moments. He agrees we will be discreet, his voice rough with sleep and regret, and he leaves my room before the house fully wakes, slipping through the door like a shadow, and I lie there in the tangled sheets that still smell like him, trying to steady my breathing and my racing heart. I shower and dress and go to Sophia's room, where I find her already awake and playing with her dolls, and her face illuminates when she sees me in a way that makes my chest ache with affection and guilt. She asks if I will stay forever, her voice so full of hope that it breaks something inside me. And I do not know how to answer, because I do not know what forever looks like in this world, in Alexander's world, in a life built on danger and secrecy. I deflect with a smile and suggest we have breakfast together, and we make our way to the terrace where Alexander joins us, his eyes meeting mine for just a fraction too long before he turns his attention to Sophia, and if anyone notices the new tension between us, they do not comment. Thomas watches me with those knowing eyes over his coffee, but says nothing, and I wonder what he thinks, what he knows, whether he disapproves or understands, or simply accepts, because Alexander's happiness is his concern. The morning passes in that strange domestic rhythm I have grown accustomed to, Sophia and I reading in the library, working on a puzzle, talking about her feelings and her memories of Caroline. And the little girl is so open now, so trusting, that I cannot imagine leaving her, even though I know this situation cannot continue indefinitely. Mid-afternoon finds us in the garden, Sophia picking flowers to press in a book while I sit on a bench nearby, and Alexander is in his study meeting with associates about something he did not specify, and the day feels almost normal until I hear a noise at the perimeter, something sharp and wrong that makes the guard near the gate shout. Thomas appears from nowhere, running across the lawn with an expression that sends ice through my veins, and he grabs Sophia in one arm and my wrist with his other hand, pulling us toward the house with urgent force. Gunfire. The sound cracks through the air like thunder, and my nursing training kicks in, keeping me calm even as pure terror spikes through every nerve, and I scoop Sophia into my arms as we run, Thomas ahead of us, more gunfire behind us. The sound of men shouting and glass shattering somewhere in the house. We reach the library, and Thomas moves a bookshelf that swings outward to reveal a steel door, and he punches a code into the keypad with shaking fingers before pushing us inside the safe room, a reinforced space with concrete walls and supplies and a monitoring system showing camera feeds from around the estate. Thomas seals us inside, and Sophia is crying now, terrified and clinging to me, and I hold her tight and force my voice to stay steady, singing the lullaby I have sung to her on difficult nights, keeping my body between her and the door, even though the door is designed to withstand explosives. More gunfire rattles through the feeds, and I see men in black moving through the grounds, and Alexander appears on one screen, weapon in hand, his face a mask of cold fury as he directs his security team. And I realize this is not a probe like before, this is a full assault, James Lennox making his real move. Hours pass in the safe room, and Sophia eventually cries herself into an exhausted sleep in my arms, her small body heavy with the weight of fear and confusion. And I sit on the reinforced bench with my back against the concrete wall, watching the security feeds with growing dread as Alexander and his men move through the estate engaging Lennox's forces in a battle that looks like something from a war zone rather than a private home. I count 8 hostile intruders on the screens, maybe more that the cameras cannot see, and I watch Alexander move with lethal precision through the grounds, his weapon raised. His face set in lines of cold fury that would terrify me if that fury were directed at me instead of at the men who threaten his daughter. Glass shatters on one of the feeds, and I flinch, holding Sophia tighter, and I see Thomas take down an intruder near the east wing, his movements efficient and brutal. And I realize these men I have been living with for the past 2 weeks are not just dangerous in theory, but in concrete violent practice. The gunfire slows, then stops, and the silence that follows is somehow worse than the noise, because I do not know if it means safety or if it means Alexander's people have lost, if Lennox has won, if the safe room door will open to reveal enemies instead of allies. I watch the feeds obsessively, searching each screen for Alexander's face, and my chest tightens with panic when I cannot find him. When the cameras show empty rooms and hallways littered with debris, but no sign of the man I love, and yes, I love him. I can admit that now when I might lose him before I ever had the chance to say the words aloud. Sophia stirs against me and I stroke her hair, murmuring reassurances I do not feel. And then finally, I see movement on the feed showing the main hall, and Alexander appears, blood on his face and shirt, limping slightly, but alive, and relief crashes through me so powerfully that tears spring to my eyes. He is speaking into a phone or radio, gesturing to his men, and I can see his mouth forming words I cannot hear through the soundproof walls. And then he is moving toward the library, toward us, and I hold my breath as the seconds stretch into eternity before the keypad on the safe room door beeps and the heavy steel swings open. Alexander stands in the doorway, his gray eyes finding mine immediately, and the raw emotion in his face steals what little breath I have left, and he crosses the space in 3 strides and pulls me to my feet, his hands framing my face, his forehead pressing against mine as he breathes my name like a prayer. I ask if he is hurt, and he shakes his head, tells me the blood is not his, tells me Lennox's men are dead or captured, tells me we are safe, and I hear the tremor beneath his controlled voice, the fear he will not acknowledge aloud. Sophia wakes and sees her father, and for the first time since I have known her, she reaches for him instead of me, crying "Daddy" in a voice broken with tears. And Alexander gathers her into his arms and holds her with such fierce tenderness that I have to look away from the intimacy of it. The safe room door closes behind Alexander, and finally the 3 of us are together in this small fortified space, and I see Thomas still standing in the doorway of the library beyond, speaking urgently into his radio, coordinating cleanup and securing the perimeter. And Alexander carries Sophia to the small couch built into the safe room wall, sitting with her cradled against his chest, while she clings to him with desperate fingers. I watch them, this father and daughter finally reaching for each other in crisis, and my heart aches with the beauty and tragedy of it, that it took an attack to break through the walls between them. And Alexander lifts his eyes to mine over Sophia's head, and the look in them is raw and fierce and full of a possessiveness that should frighten me, but instead sends heat through my veins despite the circumstances. Thomas enters and gives Alexander a brief report: 4 hostiles dead, 2 captured and being questioned, no casualties among our people, though 3 are injured, and I notice he says our people as though I am now part of this organization, part of this dangerous family, and perhaps I am, because I cannot imagine leaving now, cannot imagine walking away from this man and this child who have become essential to me in mere weeks. Alexander asks about Lennox himself, and Thomas shakes his head. The bastard was not among the attack force. He sent his men to test our defenses and gather intelligence, a coward's strategy. And I hear the contempt in Thomas's voice, and see the cold fury in Alexander's eyes. And I understand that this attack has consequences, that Alexander will respond with force, that the violence I witnessed today is not the end, but the beginning of something worse. Sophia has fallen asleep again, exhausted by fear and tears, and Alexander stands carefully and carries her toward the door, telling me we are moving to a secondary location tonight, a safe house in the city that Lennox does not know about, and I nod and follow, my legs shaky with adrenaline crash. And Alexander's free hand reaches for mine, his fingers lacing through mine with a possessiveness that makes Thomas raise one eyebrow, but say nothing. We move through the estate and I see the damage: bullet holes in walls, shattered windows, blood on the marble floor that staff are already cleaning. And the beautiful home that had begun to feel like a sanctuary now feels violated, unsafe. And I understand why we must leave. Alexander takes us to the master bedroom where staff have already packed bags for all three of us, the efficiency of his organization evident even in crisis. And he lays Sophia on the bed and turns to me, pulling me into his arms with sudden fierce intensity, his face buried in my hair, his body trembling with emotion he will not voice. I hold him back, understanding that he needs this, needs to feel me alive and whole in his arms, needs to confirm that Lennox did not take another woman he loves. And yes, he loves me. I can feel it in every tense line of his body, in the way his hands grip me as though I might disappear, and I whisper against his chest that I am here, I am safe, we are all safe. And he pulls back to look at my face, with eyes gone dark with emotion, and tells me he is sorry. Sorry I was brought into this violence, sorry his world has touched me with its brutality. I tell Alexander that I am not sorry, that choosing him and choosing this life with all its violence and danger is still choosing something real and precious, and I see the conflict in his face as he struggles between his desire to keep me and his certainty that I deserve better than a man who brings death to his doorstep. He tells me we are leaving in 10 minutes, that the cars are ready, that Thomas has already sent advanced security to the safe house, and I nod and move to wake Sophia, but he stops me with a hand on my arm, his fingers circling my wrist with gentle possession. And he says my name like a question and a plea. I turn back to him and see vulnerability in his eyes that makes my chest ache. This powerful, dangerous man, rendered helpless by his feelings for me. And he asks if I am certain I want this, want him, want the life of looking over my shoulder and living with guards and knowing that men like Lennox will always see me as a weakness to exploit. I step close enough that our bodies nearly touch, and I tell him that I have never been more certain of anything, that walking away from him would be the coward's choice, the safe choice. And I am done with safe, because safe means never knowing what we could become together. And I watch his control fracture as he pulls me against him and kisses me with desperate intensity that speaks of fear and possession and love he has not yet put into words. Sophia stirs on the bed and we break apart, both breathing hard, and Alexander's hand lingers on my face for one more moment before he turns to gather his daughter, lifting her with practiced care, and she mumbles sleepily against his shoulder, not fully waking. And I grab the packed bags and follow him into the hallway, where Thomas waits with 4 additional guards, all armed, all watching the corridors with military precision. We move through the damaged estate quickly, and I try not to look at the bloodstains or bullet holes. Try not to think about how close death came today, how easily Lennox's men could have breached the safe room if Alexander's security had been less prepared. And my hands shake as I carry the bags toward the garage where 3 black SUVs wait with engines running. Alexander places Sophia in the middle vehicle and I climb in beside her, pulling her onto my lap, and Alexander slides in on my other side, his body a wall of protection between me and the door, and Thomas takes the front passenger seat while another guard drives, and the convoy pulls out with precision timing, the lead vehicle moving first, then ours, then the rear guard. I watch through tinted windows as the estate disappears behind us, and I wonder if I will ever see it again, if that beautiful prison has become too compromised to ever be safe. And Alexander must sense my thoughts because his hand finds mine in the darkness,